Hello, in this section we will make our cells beautiful by creating custom TableView cells. We will take a look at designing a custom cell and how we can take that custom design and use it in our TableView. With the color view working, let's go ahead and take a look at creating a custom TableView cell. Right now we have that default cell, so let's create an entry cell and import UIKit, and then create a class called entry cell, and this will be a subclass of UI TableView cell. We'll create a few outlets because we want to be able to display the title, the body, and what color is selected. So we will create a color view that will be a UI view. We will create a title label, which will be a UI label. And then we will create body label, which will also be a UI label. And then we will have a method that updates the cell, and it's going to update the cell with an entry. So we will have this entry type that it takes in. And then we could say colorView.background color equals the entry.color. And then title label.text equals the entry.title. Body label.text equals the entry.body. Now we want to go to this entry list cell, and we want to make sure we select the cell. And for the style, make it custom and have it use this entry list cell that we just created. And then we also want to give this a height of 80 and make sure custom is selected. So this gives us some more space to work with. And now from the object library, we can drag in this view, which will display our color. So we want to pin that to the left edge and the 0 at the top and the bottom. So we can add those constraints. I forgot to hit the 0 for the left edge. We also want to give it a width of, let's try 5 for now, see how that looks. So that puts it up against the edge, and we can't see it because it's a white color, so let's go ahead and change that to a dark gray for now. And that looks kind of thin, so let's change that value to, let's try 8. And that looks pretty good. Now let's go ahead and drag in our two labels. One for the title and one for the body. And let's pin the title label for 0, 8, and that should be all that we really need. We'll keep constrain the margins checked so that we have a little bit of a gap to work with. Now let's bring that body label in, and we will set some constraints on that label as well. And let's go into attributes, and we will change the color to make it a little bit lighter. We'll change the size of our title label to be a little bit larger to make it look more like a title. And 20 looks good. Now let's give this name just some representational purposes to be able to easily see this in our storyboard, see how it looks. We'll do the same for the body. We'll say this is an example of an entry text. And for the cell itself, let's give it a disclosure indicator to have this chevron on the right hand side so the user knows that they can tap this cell. And we'll also change that font size on the body to be a little bit smaller. Also with the body selected, let's make it only be able to have a maximum of 2 lines. So now when we make this text longer, we can see that it goes off of the screen instead of going to another line. That's because we don't have constraints set up on the right hand side. So it extends well past the size of the view. So we want to go to our pin menu and put a right constraint, and we will just make this 0 to go to the edge, and we will constrain the margins to make it have that 8-point gap, and we will add 1 constraint. And that will take it up to the chevron and then give us our second line of text. Let's run the app and see how it looks. And right now you can see that everything is kind of just on top of each other. And that's because we still have to make some changes inside of our entry list.swift. So let's go inside of our entry list.swift, and we can see that we have this return UI table view automatic dimension and return 80 for the height. But there's a couple other things that we didn't do, and we didn't constrain the bottom on our body view label. So let's constrain that, and we have to change from 8, it's currently set to equals, and we want that to be greater than or equal so that it will resize the cell. So let's run that again. And that looks a little bit better. The cell now resizes, but notice this is an entry 4 times, and that's because our current entry list is using initial UI TableView cell instead of the custom cell that we just created. So this cell right now is a UI TableView cell, and we want that to be an entry list cell, or just an entry cell. So we have to cast it to be an entry cell. So we can say as entry cell, and that will give us an optional entry cell. So if there is no entry cell, we could say let's use a UI TableView cell. And this is not what we want, because this still doesn't give us access to our cell.updateView property, or update with entry. And that's because a UI TableView cell does not have an update with entry property. So we actually have to do a guardlet cell and then fail out of this method if that entry list cell does not exist, or entry cell. So now we can do our update with entry and pass in the entry. And then when we run the application, it will now use our entry cell that we created, and it won't have that normal cell on top of it. And right now it crashes because it's trying to access the color view.background color, but we never actually set any of these views up inside of our storyboard. And you can see that it says unexpectedly found nil while unwrapping. So we have to go to our storyboard and hook up these different outlets. So if we select the cell here, we have to right click on the actual cell, not on the view controller, and we can drag in our body, our color view, and our title. And that hooks up all the outlets. So now when we call that update with entry method, it knows what values to put in what views because we now have them hooked up as the IV outlets. So now we have all those cells displaying. In the next video, we will be covering the swipe to delete feature in our table view so that we can delete cells from our entries.